And that music means that we are now live here on our halftime report, Tackle Trading's daily show, where we break down the markets one step at a time from a top-down perspective. Stocks, options, commodities, equities, indexes, anything on our mind, economic news, corporate news, and kind of give you guys some insight out there if you're watching, and hopefully help you with your daily routine. Welcome out. It is Friday, fun day, as always, one of the most anticipated days of the week, not just because it's the last trading day, but because we also welcome in Coach Frank, as always. Frankie, how you doing, sir? First off,
Hey, great to be here, doing well. Yeah, I think it's probably more because it's Friday and less that I'm here, but I'll take it.
dude, take the double whammy. I mean,
I'll
it's
take it. I'll take it. There's a
both.
reason I lobbied for Fridays, right?
Both things can be independently true and work well together. That's why we have such a good time, and we're looking forward to charts at the end of the show. As always, Frank is, such a wonderful technician, one of the most important parts of our tackle trading community, a coach over there. And those of you who are veterans, you know Frank, give him a big welcome. As always, we'll look at some charts here with him here in a little bit. Other things on the show here today, a couple things I want to talk about. Number one, there's some vaccine news again, kind of trickling in over the last couple months. We've been seeing this theme. We'll see if there's any kind of market response to it. There's rumors of a new potential stimulus package being proposed by the Democrats, and the White House wants to come up to meet them as well. First positive anticipation of it in some time. We'll have the analysts break it down, see if we think there's anything there. Technically, I should say, though, is where the markets really are fighting right now. And the back and forth through the week, it's been really interesting to watch the intraday charts develop and pushing towards support and resistance as the markets are trying to fight through these levels one way or the other and come out with a winner from a chart trend perspective. Apple news, Amazon news, and Costco earnings. We'll get to it all during the show here today. If you're a veteran of our community, hashtag Team Tackle in the chat. Let's get this thing started right. Give me a thumbs up. Let's get the analytics up. And if you've not yet done it, subscribe, click the bell, come back and join us. Let's rock and roll here, boys. Maddie, I got you doing, the charts here and running the screen. How you doing today, sir?
Tim, I'm doing good, and that was a great introduction.
Really was.
It really was. I mean, you took the time to describe and explain what we were going to go through, and what I loved the most about it was your patience in going through it. Just absolutely loved it because you allowed people to come in before we get into the analysis. I love it. Love it. Perfect job.
Very much. I appreciate that. I appreciate the compliment. I will take it. And by the way, I think it's just because Frank puts me in such a good mood. It's easy to be chill and at a relaxed kind of posture when we've got Frankie here to break down the charts with us.
Everybody needs a Frank in their life. You can't be mad or angry, or you can't act like a fool, or he'll just laugh at you, and you got to laugh at yourself. No, it's everybody needs a Coach Frank in their life.
I agree.
I appreciate it. I do know that you guys are nicer to Tim when I'm around, so that might be it too, Tim. They've just
oh my goodness, a continuation of the poor is me Tim routine. We've been dealing with it ever since Grandma Monday, back when he was 2 years old.
Monday. What a great show. What was that movie? Where did we get
Dragnet?
Dragnet. That's right. What a great 80s movie. Maybe I'll give that 80s movie a watch over the weekend, but let's break the charts.
Fantastic 80s movie.
Yeah, right. With Dan Aykroyd, right? Tom Hanks.
Tom Hanks, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, good. All right. I'm not going to keep talking about this because I don't know much more about the movie.
Yeah, everybody knows.
While you're ahead.
I can't remember.
When Tim does the
I remember the goat's heads. That's about it. It's
a good movie.
All right, Matt, 3,200 in play here. Yep. Obviously, we've been trying to find support on the intraday charts and on the daily charts and alike. What's your read on the technicals here the last?
We've talked about this all week long. We talked about it the week before. When you're dealing with this type of sell-off in the market, and no, this is not panic selling. This is a standard bearish downtrend at this point. But when you're looking at this from a technical perspective, you're always looking at where support could form, and then you start to look at it as support is forming in the real time. And as we talked about yesterday, and as we talked about the day before and the day before that, 3,200 was going to be in play here. And for a couple reasons. Number one, that's right where the 100-day moving average is, where Mark talked about yesterday. It's also a significant whole number that can act as a psychological level, especially in volatile, uncertain times from a technical perspective. But most importantly, in my opinion, you're clinging on to that 61% Fibonacci retracement level, which just so happened coincides with the historical support level, old resistance acting as new support. So when you're looking at identifying support, one thing that I love to do is go through the analysis of these different methodologies of how support could form, and then as they all kind of line up together, that gives you a little bit more confidence in that support level. And that's why, for the most part, since Wednesday, since I've been on the halftime show this week, I've been looking at that 3,200 level and talking about that acting as a support level. Now, it's not support until it actually, the market confirms it as support. And what you're seeing so far is initially, again, stop me if you've heard this before, you're getting what you want to see initially. You see the slowing momentum candle here, little inside candle, little morning star type candlestick pattern. That is the slowing momentum you see as the movement to the downside has been slowing down. Remember, things trade, even though it feels crazy in the moment, it typically trades fairly consistent. And when you have the downward movement in price, with the retracement downward movement in price, you have a fairly consistent trend coming down into that 3,200 zone. So the strength of that 3,200 zone from a support level, you're a little bit extended coming into that 3,200 zone from an overall daily trend perspective. It's not surprising to see a little slowing momentum over the last 2 days, especially given the lack of news out there right now. Yeah, there's a lot of smoke out there in the market, but there's not a lot of news in the last couple days, to really kind of drive this market one way or the other. And so I got this looking very, very technically, driven right now. And then when you drop this down into an intraday time frame, we'll look at that on the 30-minute chart. You see that 3,200 zone get tested again. And so you have the upper level of the zone right there at 3,210. You have the bottom end of the zone right there at 3,200, 3,198 to be specific. And so as you've seen the market on the overnight action start to sell off a little bit, where did it come into? Well, it came smack dab right into that zone of support of 3,200. And then obviously the market, i.e. the algorithms, gobbled it up at that very, very, very well-known area of support now. And so now what you're seeing here in the marketplace is you're just seeing a typical slowing momentum type pattern at the lower end of the range on the daily scale, where you're now fighting in some degree of neutrality between 3,260 and 3,200. And so for the most part, you're not doing anything. You're just kind of waiting for the technical setup to kind of work its way out. But right now, you're just looking at a potential K trade scenario between 3,200 and 3,260. And if you do break out of 3,260, it wouldn't be surprising to see 3,300, start to get hit. That to me looks like a pretty good day trade to the top side. If 3,260 holds, there's nothing to see here. And so it's really neutral. It's really boring between 3,200 and 3,260, but we could see some fireworks coming into next week if we do see some intraday breakout one way or the other.
Mm-hmm. Frankie, what's your read on the current technicals, not only for today, but also through the week? Obviously, we had the little bit of a sell-off on Wednesday as the markets were, trending lower, and Matt broke that down wonderfully on Wednesday when it failed at resistance, broke below the moving average. Mark talked about it as well. How are you reading the current technicals right now,
Yeah,
Frank?
I mean, Matt really nailed it pretty nicely. Just the one thing I would add to it is we're now in the spot because we are creating those lower highs and lower lows in the short term. We've got those falling moving averages. It's now, there's always something else, right? There's always something. You break that intraday resistance and then you've got the hourly 9, or you've got the 50 or the 20. So we're going to be, if the bulls are ready to come back in, they're going to have to really put in some good fight if they want to just fly back in. Excuse me. But if they, so I'm not going to be the guy that's calling the bottom on Monday. I guess if we see some upward movement, we're going to have a lot of challenges in the short term. Whenever I'm looking at something like this, my history suggests don't fight the 9 EMA. When that 9 EMA is falling down, broad, don't fight it, right? If I don't want to sell into it, that's fine. But I'm not the type of guy. That's one of the reasons why I always complain about deep retracements, right? My history suggests roll with the 9 and not against it. So until we can recapture that on top of the technical break that Maddie brought up, I think beyond intraday, it's really tough to sell, me at least, from a buying perspective.
Mm-hmm. Marky, anything to add to the technical analysis here? I know there's rumors on stimulus. We'll get to that part of it as well. But, the 9 EMA, whenever we bring it up, we got to get your analysis on moving averages as well as price action here as well. What's your read right now on the technicals?
I mean, I think Frank and Matt, there's not a lot I can add to that. I mean, I think, I mean, with, and not only do you have the falling 9, you got that downsloping 20 now, and it's been a while in the market since we had a downsloping 20. It's been a good 6 months, right? And so, I mean, I think right now, barring an actual sentiment catalyst that gets people fired up, I think the best the bulls can probably hope for, obviously not day trades. I like Matt's call on that day trade. I thought that was, that's probably, you got probably 30, 35 points on the SPY you can get there. Is some kind of neutral.
Real quick on that, Mark, you don't get that type of target on a day trade very often.
No. So, I mean, so that would be a nice little day trade if it were to happen, because it would be breaking all of the intraday moving averages and the horizontal intraday resistance level. So that would be a nice little day trade setup. But for the coming weeks, I really think the best that bulls can hope for is some level of neutrality. If 32 holds, I really am suspect of upward movement into falling moving averages. And even if and so I think the best you could hope for in the short term in the coming weeks for bulls is a level of neutrality. And I would take it. Like, I would love that. I would love a 32, 3,400 or 32, 3,300 or somewhere in that range, 3,200, 3,320. That would be great. I would take that all next week and call that a huge win. Could be a good little cash flow stretch, but we're not out of the woods on the downside yet either. So yeah, it's encouraging. There's a lot of tests right there, right? On that 30-minute chart, it tested 3,200 zone. How many different 30-minute blocks am I counting? 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So it's starting to get a lot of like intraday pound, and bears kept losing. So that's really encouraging.
Matt, give me one quick read on the NASDAQ if you can. We don't got to look at all of the different indexes, but I want to see if there's anything notable. Obviously, they're going to move in correlation together, but we got a little bit of a breakout here intraday from that perspective. What are you seeing in the NASDAQ if there's anything different here from a chart perspective?
Honestly, I don't see much different in the NASDAQ. I mean, you got a little bit of a different technical read from an intraday perspective, but in these moments in time, markets trend together. It's only when you start to see a trend develop one way or the other where they start to separate themselves. And so I'm not the dude that's going to give a little bit more credence to the NASDAQ in this moment in time simply because it has a higher intraday high than the S&P 500 does, which is more just straight on neutrality. So no, I personally do not have a lean one way or the other on the NASDAQ versus the S&P. In these moments in time, when the market is trading together because of the increased fear in the marketplace, and the fear revolves around everything in the market due to that, to me it's really around the S&P 500. So I'm not the dude that's going to be like, okay, let me go micro analyze the NASDAQ to see if I can get a little bit of an edge on something. Maybe not, but to me, when the fear starts to really build in the marketplace, it's going to be the S&P 500 that leads here. So that doesn't mean the NASDAQ, once confirmed, can't outperform it. The NASDAQ has outperformed the S&P quite dramatically. That's not my point. My point is, in the fear type moments, if you're trying to get a read on one versus the other, I think you're micro analyzing things that probably aren't there.
Yeah, I mean, regardless of the marketplace you look at, I mean, we're in these like little pinchy situations everywhere. I mean, if you pulled up a weekly chart on the NASDAQ, and we commented on this at the start of the show, it's like, oh, the NASDAQ has relative strength. Well, yeah, it's just coming into moving average faster. And we saw that slap down hard on Wednesday. It's just so one day relative strength over the last couple of weeks in the NASDAQ is not the same as it was on the uptrend, on the way up. It's just, it's just not. So.
And they're leading the charge. One thing I would add to that, they're leading the charge, right? They're kind of ahead of schedule. So if we are to see, the bulls really come back in, I think it will first be recognized on the NASDAQ. You could make at least a bit of an argument right now that we've, trying to hold support. If we broke resistance, the 50-day moving average, that'd look like a, short term, but a W pattern. So I think these guys are a little bit ahead of schedule. I think that's an important area because they've kind of been a little bit faster than the market as a whole, right? For better or worse in the sell-off, if you're a bull at least. So I do think that's worth keeping an eye on. down as we move into the next week. Because right now, at least, they're probably the first one that could theoretically break back to the upside, with just the development that we've seen on the chart the last 7 or 8 trading days.
And so many of those big companies are testing down like near the 200 period moving average and whatnot as well. The individual components are going to be a big part of this, obviously. And Frank, I saw you even tweeted Google on the 200 the other day. We analyzed that on the halftime report as well. So there's a lot there to unpack, and obviously coming back up in the moving averages. One area, Mark, that might provide a catalyst outside of technicals, and this has been a technically driven market, could potentially be stimulus. I did see, at least some positive chatter for the very first time in several weeks at least. And I don't know if this is just, blustering. I don't know if it's smoke, but there's no fire. I'm not sure, but I want to get everybody's read on this. Mnuchin says, the president and I want more support. I've probably spoken to Speaker Pelosi 15 to 20 times. Pelosi says that they've, kind of crafted a $2.4 trillion package. They're ready to go through the details, talk about where the money's going to go and all that kind of stuff. Do you think this positive chatter is something, Mark, or nothing?
Because now we're entering the world of political theater, right? The technical chart, as difficult as it is far more easy, is a lot easier to understand than the political theater. We're 39 days out from the election. I mean, call it the skeptic in me, call it the dark soul in me. I just can't imagine whether they should or shouldn't. It's not a moral argument. I can't imagine the Democrats handing Trump a gift 39 days out before the election, and so I just can't see that happening. It could have happened, of course, sure. I mean, they might strategically think, or maybe they do the right thing. I don't know. I'll believe that when I see it. But I just can't see it happening before the election.
And I don't know what the probability was before this chatter. Let's say that we had a low probability of it happening, like 10%. Doesn't the chatter at least bring your probability analysis up a little bit? Maybe now we're 20% or something, even if you still don't think it will happen.
Once again, call it the skeptic in me. If I was like a black-hearted soul, and I was representing the Democrats, and I'd use the same analogy if I was representing the Republicans, I would want to give the appearance that I was doing all I could. Right? That I was doing all I could, and I'm willing to negotiate because I have the people's best interest at heart. And so I would give that appearance. I just can't believe, and tomorrow will be 38, and the next day 37, and the next day 36, and every day we get closer, that you give the perception that Trump got a deal done, and here's all this money, Americans. Because there was a poll out recently by the Financial Times, and they polled America, and it was 90% of America wants more stimulus. So, we might be divided. People might be ready to go to the streets to fight one another, but they all agree on a couple of things. One, we don't like China. And two, we want more money. And so that would be such a huge optics win that would play in Trump's favor, in my humble opinion. And I just can't see the Democrats handing him that gift for political reasons. I think a stimulus deal will happen shortly after the election in some form, when when the election is over. A stimulus deal will happen. It's just a question of when, because we need it badly in order to prop up a domino type effect in this economy.
Maddie, what's your read on the situation?
I just can't see it happening before election.
It's difficult to read because in this season I see everything through the election cycle eyes. And when I'm in election cycle, or when we're in election cycle, I don't trust anything any politician says, and neither should anybody else. These are the worst propaganda moments in human history, is the last 2 months of a national election. And I know we're always in the moment, and this is the most crazy, most volatile, most this, most that in human history. That's not my read on things. I try to have historical perspective. This happens every election season. It gets nasty, it gets name calling, gets crazy. This isn't the first time we've had bad actors in election season. Okay, so I don't trust a lot of what politicians say in election season, but if you do take what they said between Mnuchin and Pelosi, talking about how they've been having phone calls regarding new stimulus, how the Democrats are, looking to put in another play where they're going to have a reduced, a reduced plan that includes enhanced employment benefits, direct payments to Americans, further pushes out more PPP loans, airline, restaurant bailouts, you name it. I mean, you want it, it's in there, but it's about 2.2 to 2.4 trillion. Trump was talking about coming up to 1.5 trillion just last week. So is there something there that could happen before the election? Yeah, there is something there that could happen before the election. And if Trump is in the 1.5 trillion, and these are big ifs, but if Trump's in the 1.5 trillion, and if Pelosi is coming down to 2.2 trillion, there's a deal to be had there, guys. There is. There's enough common ground for a deal to be had. The question is this just them playing politics? And so, whereas I do feel like you would increase the likelihood of a deal getting done in the next few weeks, I still think it's a very unlikely scenario. So if I was at like 0.01%, I might be at 3% now. So yes, you do see an increased probability, an increased likelihood, but this next 40 days is going to be crazy train, guys. It just is. It's going to be crazy train, and it's going to be psychotic, and it's going to be nuts, and it's going to be yin and yang, and it's going to be, he said and she said, and it's just going to be crazy train. So it's hard to trust anything that they're saying. Again, they haven't had any formal talks yet. We're just hearing the chatter that they have had some degree of phone calls between Mnuchin and Pelosi. Over the last 3 days, Mnuchin and Powell have been very, very adamant that there is parameters to have a deal in place, and they weren't speaking to necessarily the Congress. They were speaking specifically to Nancy Pelosi there. So is there enough rage, and is there enough pressure from the consumer base to force these politicians to act? I don't know. I don't know. And I don't think anybody does. I do think you have to increase your likelihood of a deal getting done, especially if the market spins out of control. I mean, guys, it's one thing for the economy to everybody understands the economy is struggling and whatnot, but the economy is so slow moving. I mean, it is so slow moving. Whereas the stock market, if the stock market goes down another 5-10%, it's in every headline in the world, and that really kind of forces the politicians to actually deal with something. So there are variables out there that could put more pressure on the politicians to come to the table and negotiate a deal. So you have to increase the likelihood of it, but I still think it's a under 20% though.
Well, the old what was that, Dumb and Dumber? So you're saying there is a chance.
There is a chance.
There is.
Well, listen. As long as they're talking, I mean, that's a positive sign. As long as they're talking, and I know there's vitriol between Pelosi and Trump, but I haven't necessarily seen that degree of vitriol between Mnuchin and Pelosi.
No, they seem to
or
talk.
Mnuchin and Schumer, by the way.
Has any politician that was hated increased their likability more in 1 year than Steve Mnuchin?
No, he's honestly seen as the same person in the room, Mark.
Like Steve Mnuchin.
I'm so shocking I said that.
I know, like Steve Mnuchin used to be a punching bag, right? I mean, remember the Mnuchin massacre?
No, he's still a punching bag.
But like, I mean, I have grown to like Steve Mnuchin. Now, Larry Kudlow, on the other hand.
Kudlow can get out of here, but
I've grown to like Steve Mnuchin.
I'm with you on that. I have the last 6 months, I have found a deeper respect for Steve Mnuchin. He was one of those cronies I couldn't stand from the banking industry a year ago. Now I've seen him as the same person in those rooms, and I could not imagine the difficulty in trying to be the moderator between the Trump administration and Nancy Pelosi right now. I could not imagine the difficulty of that job. So
he's earning his
Steve
paycheck.
Mnuchin has earned his pay this year.
Yeah, there's no question about it. And I think it's a good call, Mark. I can't think of another one who has kind of at least had such a positive year in a year where there's so much negativity. I mean, Steve is moving at least in the right trend for likability. We'll see. I still think it's low probability as well, but I
And
agree.
plus, the picture of Steve Mnuchin on the phone calling the plunge protection team, that meme
It's
that
one
gets
of the
out there.
best
I
memes.
love it. I love it, right? I laugh every time I
Yeah,
see
it's
it.
one of the best memes of 20. That and the one with Jay Powell sitting at his desk looking at the computer screen and everybody puts fake pictures on it. That one's good too.
Yeah, yeah. Other areas of the market that we've been tracking for some time, Mark. I saw that there is a federal judge that needs to get some kind of injunction done by today to stop the TikTok ban by Sunday. Do you think there's anything here, or is it just a news story that we got
I've
to
been
wait?
on record all week. Listen, I trust my Global Times propaganda,
Mm.
so I don't think a deal's happening on TikTok. Like,
Yeah.
now, whether they get an injunction to keep my daughter from being able to do cat videos, I don't know if that will happen or not. But
Well, there's 2:30 deadline today. We'll know before the end of the market day, just after the halftime report, whether that injunction does get upheld or not, one way or the other. And then the Sunday thing is still in play for that over the weekend. Matt, this kind of has moved into a non-market news story, quite frankly. It's more interesting just from a TikTok perspective, social perspective. Do you think there's anything here that's, could move the market at all? I mean, I don't think so.
TikTok?
Yeah, TikTok deal with
No,
all
no,
China.
no. TikTok could be one of those scenarios where you see a breakout and it's a headline that shows, okay, look at the continuation of the breakout when it's really just momentum.
Mhm.
But no, it's a TikTok deal. It's not one of those things that could be a catalyst to turn around a marketplace that's in a bear trend.
Mhm.
So no, could it be a little positive in certain aspects of the market? Certainly. But I don't think it's one of those catalysts that could navigate a market direction. And I just don't see that scenario being played out. A CARES Act, an extension of the CARES Act, certainly that's a big time deal. And that's why it obviously needs to be talked about. But no, at TikTok, I think people are mostly done with the TikTok conversation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's getting a little tiring, quite frankly. It's like, okay, guys, make a decision. Let's move past it and move on with our lives. The one I did see one note I found interesting, by the way. Bank of America does a weekly fund flow report, Mark, and they did note that from Wednesday to Wednesday a week ago to Wednesday this week, we saw 25 billion being pulled out of equities. It was the largest on record that they've been measuring over the course of a 25, 30-year period. And you see that in the charts when people were selling. I mean, sentiment definitely has changed. The technicals will drive us here, but it's an interesting condition to watch this thing battle and try to find support down here. Just kind of
no,
getting
I mean,
keep
and
tracking
once
these
again,
charts.
and that outflow, I think, plays into the sentiment thing, right? Is like, and Matt did a great job yesterday breaking down the themes, right? The reopening and stimulus and Fed and election and earnings. And where is the thing that's going to get people excited about stocks again? That shift the sentiment where they go, yeah, where they get back to that stonks only go up. And so, I mean, stimulus certainly would do it. It would
Yeah, I
do it
think
for
they're
me.
hanging on. It's hanging on that. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I mean, if I heard deal rumor close to getting done, that would certainly like rev my motor up quite a bit
Sure.
on the whole thing.
Mhm.
But absent that to get excited, I mean, you just got to trust the charts. And I think that outflow, I think also, you brought that up when we were meeting this morning, Tim. And, I mean, I just think and on the election, like, I don't see I mean, I can see both sides. If Trump wins, I can see why there might be additional market risk because of China, other things. Biden, if he rolls down the corporate tax cut. But for me, it's a non-factor. What I worry about with the election is like a self-fulfilling prophecy. People
Mhm.
are worried about the election. And so heading into the election, they start pulling out more and more money. And so the election risk, this perceived election risk, becomes this self-fulfilling prophecy in the next 5.5 weeks where people are like, oh, I'm worried about it. And I'm going to pull out my money. And that starts a cascading effect. So I think that's more concerning to me as far as the election than anything on the election itself. So
And I keep trying to wrap my head around the election risk potential. I went back and looked at some of the volatility around Bush v. Gore, but frankly, I don't have any conclusions yet because Bush v. Gore was an unexpected event that kind of just developed over those course of those days and weeks and that month, right, in November of 2000. This one, we're kind of anticipating election risk in front of it. You're already seeing outflows. The sentiment has kind of changed. I'm going to trust the charts. I mean, I don't know how else to do it right now, Frankie, besides just focusing on price action, trade what I see. And if there is a stimulus deal, sure, that could be a catalyst, right? But I think we got to trust what we're seeing here in the charts, don't you, Frank?
Oh, I absolutely. I always think that. I always assume the charts are smarter than me. And so if it's not breaking resistance, how bullish can it be? If it's not breaking support, how bearish can it be type of stuff, right? So I'm 100% on board with you, not just now, but always.
I appreciate that, my friend. It's softball weekend. I threw that softball, right fat pitch down the middle there, Frankie. No
I
question.
appreciate it.
Let's keep working through the markets one step at a time. Then we'll get to individual corporate news. Matt, crude oil next, if we can. Kind of been hesitating all week after that first Monday selling candle. Stuck right here, right near $40. You know, until we break this little range that it's developing here, I don't see much there. Frank, I'll get your analysis first on this crude chart, if I can.
Yeah, I'm still not interested in it, but I will say I think you could at least start to be making a K trade style of thinking. You know, sell below 39, buy above, 41, 41.50 maybe. We've gone into a little bit of a range. We're kind of hanging out in those moving averages. I still think there's just easier things to work with, especially directionally, than crude right now. So I continue to just have it as a whatever, but we are kind of going into that little bit of a range, and breaking out of that range, whichever way it ultimately breaks, I would call it a signal. I just don't think I would personally call it a tradable signal. But again, we're dancing around for 2 more weeks, and then, maybe I've changed my mind. But right now, I do see that as the most likely thing kind of projecting forward. Break above or below is a signal giving the opportunity to that side to come in for a quick little pop. Sustained, I don't know, but a little pop I would expect.
If you think about it, we've got this intraday range this week, but crude's been in a range now for 4 months. I mean, maybe this is where the market is pricing it right now, Matt. Until we get a breakout one way or the other, it's hard to call it, anything but neutral. Maddie, what's your read on this crude chart?
Same rate as I had yesterday. I'm still looking at a most likely scenario to the downside. I still have this as a bearish retracement, but the longer it consolidates there between 39 and 41, and the 39 level on the intraday chart is the easy one. That's 39. You see it right there. Yeah, you have some, right above that at 39.22, 20. You have some support there as well, but I really got that read at 39. It breaks 39, you should see 37 by 36. And so that one's a little bit easy one. On the top side here, though, it's a little bit more difficult. You do have a pivot right there at 40.65 that also coincides with the overhead resistance level over here. And so, ultimately, I do got it at 41 as well there, Frankie. But if you do break out of that 40.65, you should see some price appreciation. And even though I got the daily chart as a bearish retracement, still consolidating, looking for a breakdown of 39. I do respect the neutrality over the last 4 days. I mean, this isn't the first time we've seen crude in the last 3 months consolidate in a tight range. And so nobody should be surprised at the crude's ability over the last 4 days to consolidate between that 39 and 41 range. And nobody should get in the prediction business on crude and saying it's going to break on Monday or it's going to break down on Tuesday. It's going to do it when it wants to do it. It's going to choose that time frame. You're not going to choose that time frame for it. And so the longer it does consolidate, I think the bearish retracement on the daily chart gets a little bit weaker, and you're not looking as aggressively to the downside of 37 to 36. But for now, I got this as a bearish retracement on the daily chart. I got confirmation underneath 39, and on the intraday, I got neutrality between 39 and 40.65.
Yeah, and whatever neutrality, I don't have anything to add to the analysis there. Boy, oil might be neutral. Energy stocks are getting beat up. Whether it's ExxonMobil or Marathon Petroleum or BP. I mean, BP came out with an investor conference today and was trying to basically calm the nerves of investors and saying, listen, we're transitioning to carbon friendly plans, and it's going to be a long plan. But investors are belling I mean, the charts on energy companies are just outright hideous right now. You know, they're just ugly. And, you know, you think sentiment's bad in the market or neutral in the market. Sentiment is very clear on energy. And it's like, listen, we don't want any. Like, we don't want any. Now, that might provide a really cheap opportunity, but man, those technical charts are hideous in energy right now.
Yeah, the energy sector have been the worst performing sector for the month of September, outpacing all the other ones. They are hideous, and they've been really selling. We had quite a few candidates, Frank, from last week's options and stock report from energy as well, including just the XLE, the ETF. You know, so
You pull up BP's chart, and like BP, when it broke those support, and what you've had on a technical level, and if we could pull up BP's chart, you've had a support break, and this has been in energy companies everywhere. And when that support level broke, because it traded very consolidated for several months, and then when support broke, and this is technical analysis 101, and when Frank said he doesn't like to fight the 9, this is a great example why. You break horizontal support, and then a downtrend occurs. And those downtrends, when that momentum starts, we see it to the upside, but you also see it to the downside. When there's that lack of sentiment, when there's that breaking of support, and then you start a short-term downtrend, it can get really, really ugly. I mean, BP is at a price level now. It is approaching those March lows, which represents the lowest price in the history of the company. In the history of the company. So, yeah, it's not pretty.
I don't think that's the last time you're going to hear that headline, by the way. You know, BP has been under pressure, and they've had a lot of problems. They did reduce their dividend quite a bit earlier in the year, right, Mark? They were the company. Yeah, they came out and did that.
No, the European major oil companies were much quicker than the American companies to cut dividends. You know, they're like, they didn't mess around. And you probably, listen, oil at $40, you know, there's that often debated thing, like, what price level are companies, can they make money at? You know, and it's a little bit of speculation, right? But in the range, but $40 isn't healthy. You know, even if some companies can squeak out a profit because they do great things in managing expenses, it's not a healthy number. And unless you can get oil back into the 50s, which I don't know if anyone expects anytime soon, right? The companies are going to be in this very defensive posture. And if you have multi-year oil in this 30 to 45 range, I mean, this is not great. And so you can understand why there's not a lot of euphoria in investors and why these downtrends aren't being bought up, right? You know, not only are they not being bought up, I mean, it's getting worse. So for oil companies, I think, like,
you don't have one strong green candle in the last 2.5 months or 2 months on BP. So they're not being bought up.
And so, like, you don't have even the signs of a bottom being, you know, forming during this stretch. You know, maybe like a day here it pauses or a day there it pauses, but eventually a reversal pattern will happen. But man, I have zero idea where that happens at. So, you know.
And Maddie, I know we don't have you the whole time here today, but before we lose you, I do want to get your gold analysis here. Obviously, it's been a volatile week for the precious metal. It's down there trying to find some support, but this really isn't a historical support zone. So the couple of hesitation candles, I want to get your read on what you're seeing here and where potential support might be playing in.
I think it's a Friday with not a lot of news in the last 2 days, and that's why you're seeing a support form. It has no historical importance, in my opinion. And you know, 1850 might act as a little bit of a significant whole number, but again, my read on gold was more based on the dollar yesterday hitting its head on resistance and showing a little bit of slowing momentum. I see the same thing here. The simple reality, guys, is when you understand gold and you've been around the gold market for a while, you understand that gold has a tendency to price appreciate and then base, either through triangle based patterns, some degree of continuation patterns, neutrality based patterns, and then you see a continuation to the top side. In moments in time where gold does not behave like that, and this is one of those moments where you had that blow off top in July and August, and then you had the consolidation all through the rest of August through September, the probability based on historicals was always to the top side. In moments in time where gold does not perform based on its historical performance or analysis, it takes time for it to shake out. And so I don't expect gold to get back into that. This is the moment we buy right now in this moment until some time passages, because it needs some time to cook to let the technical shake out here. It just does. Because the reality is, if it V-shaped recoveries, yeah, long-term gold holders are going to be happy and they're going to be satisfied, but most people that are not participants in the gold market are going to miss out on something like that, because it V-shapes off a low and nobody's prepared for it. It's just gold's not on anybody's mind right now. And so if it does V-shape, all of a sudden 2 weeks later, it's on everybody's mind, but you're late to the party. So for this to set up to look to adding to a position or look to initiate a position, you need some time for this to shake out on gold. And you couple that with the dollar here, and you're looking at UUP here, and UUP had a reversal pattern, and now it broke out of the reversal pattern. We talked about the failed pivots here all through that neutrality. It had a very consistent horizontal resistance. It reclaimed all the moving averages, and now you're looking at a short-term bullish uptrend on the dollar. And so as the dollar is starting to end this short-term bullish uptrend, that's just like Mark gave the analogy yesterday, swimming upstream. Well, gold would have to be swimming upstream against a very, very, very strong current, given the fact that now gold's not just fighting the analysis and in my opinion, the misinterpretation of the central bank, but it's also finding the dollar in its bullish uptrend right now. And so you have just a couple negative things really kind of, hitting at gold in the short term. Again, like I said yesterday, and like I said the day before, and like I've said every day since October of 2018, you want gold in your portfolio. Okay, you definitely want it in there. But for those of you who have not been investing in gold, you have to, and you want to for an inflationary protection, a safety, or maybe you just want something in your portfolio that just isn't just crazy train out there. Well, then you just got to be a little patient here on gold. I could see gold doing so many different things, guys. I could see a bearish retracement. I could see a V shape. I could see a break of 1850. I could see 1800. I could see 1750. And the word of the week for me, the word of last week was causation. I mean, we really butchered that
along
word
those
last
lines.
week.
We've been joking all week about they just don't have anything on why the market's doing anything. Market Watch headline today: S&P pops into positive territory in choppy Friday trade. Like, they literally don't have anything this
They
week.
really gave up today.
Taking the week off.
I loved yesterday when Zero Hedge tweets, market tanks on Pelosi and Mnuchin no talks, and I'm like,
they are so
that's a
bumbling
bullish
around right now.
retracement. they're struggling, but the word of this week for me, anyways, has been cloudy. And when I have a difficult time, like I feel like I have a pretty decent read on the technical short-term charts, but I'm having a difficult time mapping out a week to 2 weeks later. And because there's a lot of variables, there's a lot of scenarios you could play out. And so with gold right here, I simply can see too many scenarios. And when I get to the point where I'm looking at this chart and I can see too many scenarios, it gets cloudy for me. And when it does, I know for me it's a stay away at that point until this chart, because I feel like the central bank has showed their cards. I don't think they're holding anything back here. I mean, Jay Powell over the last 3 days how many times has he basically said, "What else you want us to do?"
Right.
I mean, what else?
Right.
What else you want us to do?
He's turning grumpy.
He is a grumpy old man. He's like, what? I gave you guys $3 trillion, and they're like, well, where'd it go? It went to the banks. No, what else you want us to do? What else you want us to do? And so I feel like he's getting to the point where, like, listen, I've told you guys this so many times, you keep misinterpreting it. I've told you this. I have to clarify. And then when I clarify, you all hate the fact that I clarified all the way to 2023. You hate everything. Yes, Jay Powell, guess what? We hate everything you have to say because of what your cronies have done over the last 12 years. Yes, that's well known. But the reality is, it's like, it to me, the political scenario is cloudy, the economic scenario is cloudy, the technical scenario is cloudy, the fundamental scenario is cloudy right now. And so the number one thing for me in those environments that helps me navigate and excuse my language, but the bullshit of politics, the complete nonsense of politics, is staring at this chart. I'm okay navigating a cloudy economic, fundamental, and political environment as long as the charts are in line. And the charts aren't right now. And so with the charts not being in line right now from a multiple time frame analysis, it's just a little bit tricky right now. And in these moments in time, and I'll say it again, I've said it many times, and I kind of feel like I'm a broken record. I kind of feel like I'm Jay Powell at this point, but the easy money was already made. And now the very, very difficult money is being fought for. Don't fight that battle. Wait for a clearer picture, and then let's join the freight train, whichever direction it chooses to go.
And that's the beauty of price confirmation. And when you do get clarity on the technicals, Frank, and I think probably one of the reasons why you love that old, I'm just going to focus on the chart kind of situation, right? Because then you can cut through the noise. Yeah.
Yep. Cut through. Because I've never been good at that. I'm a person, right? It's easy to see what I want to see. So the charts keep me on the straight and narrow.
Yeah, absolutely. By the way, Matt,
gold
the dollar
simply needs some time here.
Yeah, just there's not a
That
setup
is
right
all
now.
it is.
It broke to the downside. Once that support gave out, now we're below a lot of stuff, and so you've got to get a setup, right? And if it, like Matt said, if it just goes crazy and runs back up, well, good for everybody who's got a position, and good for people who jump in on that train, right? But technically, that's not what I do, at least as a trader.
No,
No,
long term, you don't care about what gold does in the short term. Nobody cares.
No matter, unless you are like fundamentally convicted at a certain price and willing to hold. Something I said a few days ago, I think applies here too. I am, like at the start of the week when Tyler and I on the show, and it's like we were trying to evaluate what happens from here. I'm always willing to miss out on V-shaped recoveries in the short term. If it happens, it happens. Hey, left without me. Guess what? There'll be another opportunity at some point. And once you let go of the V shape, because I think it's a very psychological thing. When price goes down, people are like, well, what if things go right back up and I miss it? You got to let go of that.
Yep.
You got to, for today and for the next 30 years, let go of if the V shape leaves me behind, it does. No big deal.
I'm going to be very clear on this. Okay. Swin said this yesterday in the chat. He said, I missed out on the March recovery, but I nailed the April one. And I said, and I'm going to say today,
love that line. That's a great line.
You should, and I said this in the chat yesterday, you should miss out on the recovery. You should. You absolutely should. Because if you nailed the recovery in March, you missed the failed pivots in February and early March. You got destroyed trying to pick that bottom. You should miss V-shaped recoveries. There's no analysis that says you should hit V-shaped recoveries outside of luck and degenerate gamblers out there. That's it. That's the only thing. That's the people that hit V-shaped recoveries. It's not traders. It's not Wall Street.
Why are people obsessed with trying to nail the exact low? Like, why are people obsessed with, I want to buy it at the absolute low? And so they try to guess.
Because they're cheap, Mark.
Yeah. Well, it works both ways too.
They're cheap.
It works both ways. When it's high, they want to guess the top. When it's moving down, it's always kind of cracked me up.
Yeah.
Whatever the market's doing, a large percentage of market participants assume it's going to do the other thing.
Listen, anytime I ever hear something, I bought the low. I'm like, well, golf clap.
Yeah, maybe BP is the low. Maybe BP is like right now it is the low. Yeah, like come on, man, let go of that.
It's okay.
Yeah, I'm not a buy the low guy.
Why do you think that is psychologically, where traders not only on the bottom side but on the top side are trying to pick the tops and bottoms all the time? Because that's a natural instinct by humans, I think.
Yeah, it is.
Want to be right, Tim.
I think I think Matt hits it. As stupid as it sounds, it's a lot of, and I've been there. We'd rather be right than make money, right? It's easy to fall into that line of thinking. I've given up on it. I just assume what's happening is going to keep happening, because that's usually what happens, right? I think about the market like I think about professional wrestling. I tune every week, and most of the time I can tell you exactly what's going to happen. And every now and then I get really thrown for a curveball, right? But it's not because I know a lot about wrestling. It's that I've watched it long enough to know how their stories play out. And I think about the market like a soap opera, like professional wrestling. And that really has been helpful for my my personality, I guess, in the market.
Who's Pal as a wrestler? Is he a heel turn kind of evil guy?
Oh, Pal is a wrestler. Oh,
that's a good question.
Wow.
Because
For some
Pal's
reason-
subdued, so he doesn't talk a lot, so he can't be a Hulk Hogan.
He's a Shane O'Mac. He's Shane McMahon, Vince McMahon's son, who can easily switch between good and bad.
Oh, there you go. That's a good
man.
call, Frankie.
This is a fun game that we should not play. Politicians as wrestlers.
No, Jay Pal is Shane McMahon. He's
This
sometimes
is a after the halftime report game.
Oh my
That's
goodness.
what this is.
You're right, man. If we go down this rabbit hole.
Yeah,
I think it's a perfect conversation.
It is not happening. You guys are pivoting this.
Come on, who's Trump?
Right now.
I think Trump's
Not
Hulk
gonna
Hogan.
happen.
I think Trump's
Not
the
gonna
one that
happen.
Matt was
I'll
trying to
filler
avoid,
bullshit.
and
Y'all
Chucky went
stop
straight
talking
there.
immediately. I promise you, y'all are gonna have to deal with something after the halftime report.
I was trying to avoid that one question right there, and Chucky goes right.
You all have your fun right now. I'm gonna keep filibustering until y'all shut up.
All right,
Yeah.
move
All
on.
right, well,
Back on track.
Move on.
Matt, open the link in the chat when we move to the US dollar. I saw this and thought it was really funny. A message we can all get behind.
Oh,
Since
that
as we are-
got to bring $DXY back to simulated trading, Thinkorswim. Yeah,
Exactly, yeah.
I agreed. I saw your tweet, Cody. I agree with that. I don't know why
I'm
they
with you.
did not provide that data. That is, it's just so silly.
a message
Outside
we
of,
can all get behind as coaches.
I got
teachers.
Okay, I'll play the game. I'm in. I'll play the game. I'm in. I have Trump as Ric Flair.
Oh, that's a good call,
I have
actually.
Trump as Ric Flair.
You see styling and
That's not
profiling.
that's not
Styling and profiling.
I was thinking Pal is the Undertaker, Frank, but I'm not a wrestling guy. as
Ooh,
much
that's
as-
not a bad call either.
Well, technically, if you read the politics of the day, Biden would be the Undertaker. But okay, that's it. I'm done with
Oh,
politics.
we got to be done.
One last
I'm done
thing,
with politics.
because it's a fun game. What wrestler, if you could, not who you identify with, but like if you could just be that wrestler, like who
Give
would
me
it
the
be?
Iron Sheik.
Oh, how do you lose games that were not even played? Like you somehow lose games and there's not even a score being kept and you just lost. You know, that's where you went. That's where your head went.
Dude, the
the
Iron Sheik makes me laugh.
He's a pretty entertaining guy on Twitter. He's an interesting character.
yeah.
I thought the Iron Sheik died.
No, I don't think so. He's on Twitter. Somebody's running his Twitter account. So,
Well, obviously, the only wrestlers I can name are the ones from like the 80s and 90s and whatnot. But yeah, Trump is Ric Flair. That makes some sense.
I think Matt, were you an Ultimate Warrior guy? I try to remember our childhood.
Wasn't
now.
everybody an
Everybody
Ultimate Warrior
was,
guy?
right? Yeah, he was
people
definitely
like the
like
Warrior.
Well,
Yeah.
of course. When I was 12 years old, I loved the Ultimate Warrior.
This got to be a question we got to let Frank finish on though. Frank, would you identify with as a wrestler the most?
Dude,
'Cause
that
you're a
is
wrestling guy.
Yeah, that is an impossible question to ask me. I can't answer it. I can't
No.
answer it.
That's just too tough.
It's just too tough. It's too tough. Probably
enough.
Triple H if you made me. Triple H has always been my favorite. So I'd always want to be Triple H, but I don't know that I could pull it
Oh.
off.
See, now I'm in this. Frank, I would say Frank's got the hair and the beard to be Triple H.
He's got the
He
hair and the
does.
beard to be Triple H.
Boris Johnson. Now I'm back to this. I got Boris Johnson as Ric Flair. Like he even got
Yeah,
the same
I
type
could
of
see that.
hair. Like, yeah, I like it.
Yeah.
Who's John
I don't like
Cena?
this game. I'm done. I'm done.
I think
don't-
Cody's John Cena. If Cody could be anyone, it would be John Cena.
I'm not John
Cena. I'll take
Cena.
You know, I think that's who he'd be like. I want to be John Cena.
Oh, listen. I don't know. I don't know if I have any more wrestlers outside of the Iron Sheik. This is not a game for me to
I
win.
hate
Listen,
all
I
of
had
you
to- I
right now
had to-
for even.
I had to drag
Frank,
him to
I
an
could-
event with me
Brian,
once.
Absolutely. Brian just said Frank is Shawn Michaels. I could see that one.
Yeah, I could go with
sexy
I'm on
Flair.
HBK.
Absolutely. I loved Shawn Michaels back in the day.
You know, everybody likes Shawn
Stone
Michaels.
Cold. Oh my God. That's
Stone
what we
Cold
need
was
in
my
politics. We need a Stone Cold Steve Austin.
There you go. I
And
think
Stone Cold. Yeah.
Yeah, Stone Cold and the Rock ticket. You can sign me up for that.
Done.
I like it. By the way, The
Presidential
Rock might be
candidate,
running
Stone
for
Cold,
president.
Steve Austin.
I think Tim could pull off Mick Foley.
Mick
Yeah,
Foley?
get a beard growing.
I know
I
that's
think,
an
I think
insult,
Tim
but I
could
don't
pull
know
it
why.
off. I think he could be like, man guy, or like if he like.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, now I gotta
You-
go look up Mick Foley quotes and clips to see how.
Oh, wasn't he Mankind? Was
Yeah, it was
Mankind,
Mankind
yeah.
and
Mankind.
Dude
Cactus Jack.
Love, Cactus Jack. Yeah, he's a man of many. Yeah.
All right.
Love, and he was Dude Love, dude. Tim could like pull off Mick Foley, dude.
Tim could be Dude Love. Absolutely.
I knew this was gonna happen. I
Yeah,
knew
yeah.
it.
You
I
really let
knew
this get out
was
of hand,
gonna-
Cody.
I'm sorry.
right,
Zach.
all right.
I knew
Moving
this was a
on.
bad.
I'm gonna
bad.
Mick Foley clips. I know that for certain. So I got to figure out if I do connect with that or not, Marky. All right, guys, moving on. Anything else in top down analysis?
Let me just stop you. You won't.
Won't be able to connect with Mick Foley.
You won't like it.
I won't like it. I figured as much. All right, let's move on to individual companies if we can here. And Maddie, how long do we got you? I know you got to bounce a little bit early today.
You got me for seconds.
One more then Costco earnings. I'll keep you for that, and then we'll transition. Have Cody run screen here in a second. Obviously, the big retailer, major name here. They broke their earnings down. Not a busy earnings season, Matt, but some impressive numbers from what I read. Market response hasn't been impressive. I'm interested to get your take. What do you see in Costco earnings?
Spencer, I know I am 100% to blame on this one. I had the ability to shut it down and I got sucked into it. I did. I gave in. So I will take that on. I can't even yell at Mark and Frank and Tim anymore. This is completely on my
because
head.
we all shut up, you know.
They shut up, and then I was like, all right, I'll chase the nut. I'll do it. Costco earnings. Costco had actually fairly decent earnings report. Nothing to see here, but let's go through the numbers. Numbers $3.13 in EPS number versus the expectation of $2.85. The revenue came in at $53.4 billion versus the $52.6 billion in expectation. Revenue did increase year over year at 12.4%. A very, very lukewarm type numbers, very average type numbers. One positive thing that I see that kind of stood out though was same store sales, which is a very important indicator for retail, especially brick and mortar retail. Same store sales increase was expected at 7.8% increase, came in at 11.4% increase. And so overall, they got a decent beat on EPS in line with revenue. Revenue coming in at 12.4% year over year is fine. It's nothing great, nothing bad for overall revenue with Costco. And then same store sales were probably the one area of the report where you could look at that and say that's a positive. I like the response here, to be honest with you. And I want to get Frank's take on this, because if Costco would have blown up one way or the other, there's nothing to see here until it shakes out again. Whereas, the muted response to a muted earnings report, in my opinion, still does keep alive that potential breakout here. And let me give you a number here, Frankie, somewhere in that 347 to 350 area, somewhere in that zone of resistance. With the muted response to I'll say a positive earnings, a muted response to a positive earnings though. Does that keep that breakout here still in play for you?
Absolutely. And I'd like to see this be something we could talk about next Friday, because if it wants to just fly, it's a little tougher sell. But if we can hold this low that we've set up here and build off of that low that we set up last week, working back into it, it looks like a pretty clear path back into resistance. I hesitate to get too aggressive on targeting in a market like this, but you look at Costco and it's like, if this takes out that 350-ish zone, there's just no real challenge, right, until we get into the low 360s. So if we get some nice development and can kind of grind our way up there over the next week or so, absolutely could be something really interesting. If it just wants to fly through it, that probably means the market's flying. That probably means I've got things I like better than Costco immediately bouncing. But I like the response. I like that it's kept our chart very much in play, because I guess you could even potentially go the other way, right, and talk about a
Yeah.
breakdown if you really, you know, we're bearish on Costco. I think there's probably better things that to play to look at bearish personally, but I think you like it. It hasn't messed up your chart really either way, right? It's
Well, and Dean asked, should we look at it across as the 9 or the 20 here? And I don't know if you're referencing, you know, Costco here, but I'm going to assume you are referencing Costco, Dina. To me, no, I mean, if you do reclaim the 9 and the 20 right there, that's a positive thing in the short term, but you still have that overhead at 347 by 350. If you can clear air there, there's nothing really till 360, 363. So in
yeah.
that scenario, I think you got to wait till it clears the head and shoulders, because right now the technical pattern is a head and shoulders formation. You have a left shoulder, you have a head, you have a right shoulder, you have a horizontal / vertical neckline right there between 330 and 335. So to me, because of the overriding pattern being a head and shoulders reversal pattern, to see that break out of that pattern and thus demolish that pattern is very, very important to me in the analysis. And so there would be no trigger within the reversal pattern, the same way there should be no trigger within any type of continuation or reversal pattern. You got to wait for the pattern to get broken. And that's the thing about trading in neutrality, guys. Reversal and continuation patterns, they're just a form of neutrality, is really all they are. And we can get a bearish or a bullish lean based on the overall support and resistance, what creates the pattern. But you never want to aggressively take a position in a short-term trade when the stock is within its pattern. You got to wait for it to break out of its pattern and start a new trend. And so for me, I'm not looking to short Costco. It's number one, it's a company I like, and number two, I think Frank correctly pointed it out. There's better shorts to be had out there, no doubt about that. So I'm looking at Costco at that 347 to 350 range. If you can break out about that, you should have some clear air to 360, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah. And just to
one
add
thing.
one thing. Oh, go ahead, Mark.
We probably are going to say the same thing. I'm not sure.
Yeah, probably. When you
Like,
when
go
you go
ahead, Mark.
sideways, those moving average signals are going to be a lot less valuable. Dina, is that where you were going, Mark?
Yeah, no, that's exactly where I was going. Yeah, like, and you see this in patterns when things consolidate for about a month, and those moving averages turn sideways. You know, one thing I teach in all my classes that I do is just take the moving averages off. You want to stick with strict horizontal support and resistance in these circumstances.
Yeah, those short-term moving averages are really good momentum averages, but they're really poor neutral moving averages, at least in my mind.
They are a momentum trend indicator.
It just take a look at it. When it was trending, look at the consistency of that 9 EMA. When it's not trending, there's no consistency to that 9 EMA in any capacity. You know, we were looking at BP earlier today, and you know, we were talking about it from a trend perspective, but look at the moving averages within the pocket of neutrality. There's no trade there. Look at the cross, nothing. 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 It's all random variables at that point. Whereas when you see that trend really start to develop to the downside, look at how important those moving averages are.
Every time it comes up, it slaps it down. So they are powerful in trends. In neutral consolidation, stick to strict horizontal support and resistance.
Alrighty,
and with that said, boys, I am out. Team Tackle out there, you guys have an absolutely wonderful, wonderful weekend. Looking forward to the scouting report meeting after we get done with the market today. And for those pro members out there, definitely check out the scouting reports. You guys know how we do it on the weekends. You guys have a wonderful, beautiful weekend. I'll see you guys on Monday.
Love it.
Awesome.
All right, we'll talk to you soon here, Maddie.
See you in a while, Maddie.
Yep. All right, let's keep working through corporate news if we can here. And Marky, let's move on to Novavax next. NVAX here if you can, Cody. Obviously, there was a couple of COVID and vaccine-related news items today here, Marky. I know they don't catch a lot of attention these days. Markets tend not to pay attention to them. But I even came and looked at the Novavax chart, and I'm like, okay, a little breakout there might be interesting. I'll get Frank's take on that here in just a minute. Mark, what did Novavax have to say here about their vaccine phase 3 trial?
Well, I mean, it was a bunch of sell-side analysts came out and basically had glowing things to say about the results and where they're at, and it's funny because and we've been off this for months and months and months, but like so many people still are speculating on like who will be the big winner. I think there's just going to be multiple winners. Now, I mean, I think the Novavax news is interesting in the broad scheme because once again, because we had Johnson & Johnson enter phase 3 a couple days ago. The push, this collective push of companies towards the vaccine, I think there's going to be multiple vaccines. I think there's going to be multiple winners. And so that lottery ticket that a lot of people were betting on like Moderna early on or Gilead, and these companies, they got that big run up, right? But if you pull up Gilead's chart and the remdesivir, remember the big, huge spike? It's like when you chase news, sometimes it flips on the side and goes down. So
GILD there, Cody. GILD. And yeah, these have been, and look at the choppiness back there. And we talked about those news items so many times here, Frank. When you're dealing with pharma or biotech, and obviously in 2020, it's been vaccine and treatment for COVID and all that kind of stuff. You get the pops on the news, but that doesn't necessarily inspire a technician to want to trade them, Frankie. Back on the Novavax chart here for a minute, though, because I understand that backdrop around any company around this, but Frank, is that breakout tradable if it does happen?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to, again, this is one of those that's a lot easier to like if we grind our way up over the next week and a half. Being pharma and so news driven, that might be asking a lot, right? But right now, it potentially is there. We've created that higher low, right? I think we need to break that resistance to get rid of the folks who treated this as a bearish retracement. It also happens to line up with the 50-day moving average. If we break, it's going to look like, again, one of those reverse head and shoulder type of patterns, potentially. I see it, but I wouldn't sign up to buy the breakout blind here. I don't think it's one of those scenarios. If you are comfortable trading within this space, which there is the extra, pop and risk, right? And when some people say don't do drugs in regards to trading, I'm not a hardliner in that regard personally, but I understand if scenario people aren't interested in. But I think we need positive development. I think our best case scenario is we grind up into that resistance, we push down and create another higher low, making a little cup and handle formation, and then are taking it out a week and a half, 2 weeks from now. And then, yeah, you could probably sign me up if we get that type of development, but we're going to need some before you could get me to sign up.
Well, and part of the hard time I have with any of these vaccine stocks, Mark and Frank, is simply that I don't know when regulatory approval is going to come in anyway, and how much profitability is going to come from them, even if they do get these things out there in the market. Mark, you talked about how there's like 160 candidates out there. One thought real quick, and then whatever you've got. But I even saw today that Governor Cuomo out of New York basically said, we're going to have our own independent review of the vaccine, regardless of what the federal government does. So when these drugs are even going to be available, even if they do make progress, we don't know that for certain. I see it as well, Frank. I think it's got to be broken down technically. I would not fault somebody for trading a breakout here, but I'm kind of a stay away on these kind of stocks personally. I got to tell you. I mean, that's just going to be my perspective on it.
Nothing wrong with that. Nothing.
Pull up a 15-year weekly chart on Gilead, and to see and pull up GILD. What do you think about breakdown?
That is something.
Wow, that's
because I'm a huge bias support, and this is a massive. This isn't a little bitty support level.
Oh, that's some real support.
This has been tested dozens of times over multiple years. This is about as massive of a support level as you are going to see. Now, that makes it more significant. It makes it more likely to hold, in my opinion, but it also makes it quite the catalyst if it doesn't.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you could sign me up for that.
Yeah,
wow. I knew Frank would love it.
Multi-year support being violated with no real support below that. I don't even know where the next level would be. Probably, I guess.
Well, there isn't one.
50. Maybe there's a little pivot there.
No, that don't matter.
Yeah, there isn't really one. Yeah, definitely an interesting long-term chart there, Mark. Multiple time frame analysis in play there. Yeah, you could get me on board of that. Another one here. Let's move on here. Amazon, if we can. We've been hearing all kinds of news about Amazon releasing new products, getting into new sectors. This is not new. That's actually been happening for the better part of 2 decades. But recently, Mark, and actually today, they announced that they're going to be getting into the cloud-based gaming subscription service. Putting some money into it. We saw a move by Microsoft this week, acquiring another gaming company. So here's another big tech firm getting into gaming, Frank, and the service is going to be called Luna. It's going to debut this next Thursday, $6 a month. I don't know what games are involved here.
No, I don't either, but it's for $6. I'm going to look.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll have to take a peek at it. Mark, do you think there's anything significant here of these big tech firms, Microsoft earlier in the week, now Amazon getting into gaming?
The game is a great space.
It's a good space to be, yeah.
I mean, like we've been pro gaming. I mean, for all, really strong for the last 18 months. And when COVID hit, we were all over gaming as a recommended space to get into. But the trends, like, listen, when you think about investing and the future, and because stocks are all about the future, right? Ask anybody that's been trading for 2 weeks on Twitter. Gaming is one of those spaces that you can say with a certainty will be around. It resonates with kids. It resonates with 20 somethings. It resonates with old people that were gamers 30 years ago. And so you have, like, when gaming started, 35, 40 years ago you're starting to have in the life cycle of humanity, entire generations that will be gamers on some level, and so your market is just becoming humankind, right? And so gaming's a great space to be in. There will always be titles that are certain winners that become bigger than others, but the space as a whole is a winning space. Now, Amazon 2332, they're going to be controlling the world, battling Disney in the great battle. So of course they're acquiring more and more. That's what Amazon's going to do. So not surprising. They're going to get into everything. And I'm not even joking.
It looks like a Netflix type model for gaming, Frank. I mean, they're going to have dozens and dozens and dozens of different titles that people can they can play them if they're on the service, obviously. Sonic the Hedgehog, Shadow Tactics, Everspace, Assassin's Creed, kids games, shooter games, all kinds of different games. So it seems kind of like a Netflix type of model for gaming. It's interesting to me, and I expect they'd probably acquire more titles for the games and all that kind of stuff. So I might sign up, take a look at it, see what it's all about. $6.
I'm interested enough to go look it closer. Yeah, for sure.
And it will be interesting to see if one of these big tech companies ever gobble up one of the big players, right? An EA, a Take-Two, an Activision,
right?
Because they're making these smaller acquisitions. It'll be interesting to see. I think some point in the next decade you're going to see a major acquisition by a major tech company gobble one of these companies up.
A couple more corporate notes, then we're going to get into charts with Frank. We did talk a little bit about vaccines earlier, Mark, but AstraZeneca had an interesting note that wasn't about their COVID vaccine progress. They actually received partial immunity from the European Union regarding potential liability to COVID-19 vaccine. So that's obviously going to be positive news for a company that's developing a vaccine and whatnot. AZN is the ticker on that one, Cody. Yeah, AZN is the ticker. Stock, responding a little bit here. Nothing there in the chart that grabs my attention. Apple next, if we can here, AAPL. And I would hope you'd get that one there, Cody, on the ticker.
Get all the basics.
Yeah. Apple, you remember about 2 months ago, we talked about the European Union's court, basically siding with Apple over the $15 billion tax bill they owed Ireland. Well, they're challenging that again in court. It's another reminder, if we don't have to do it, we'll do this a lot, I'm sure, over the course of the years. These court and legal battles, they take a long time to actually work themselves out, Mark. In fact, sometimes years and years and years and years. Usually the day they make the headline news, that doesn't necessarily impact it outside of that one day until we actually get clarity on these things. I think it would be big for the EU to be able to tax Amazon. I know there have been complaints about, or not just Amazon, but Apple here. There have been complaints about them being able to shelter taxes, but these things don't necessarily play themselves out in a day, right, Mark?
No, they never do. The headline interesting to talk about long term. What is interesting to me is the battle Apple is having with that falling 9, right? It's going to be really interesting and once again, it doesn't mean it's a buy signal because you got all kinds of layers of junk, But, like for a company like Apple that is such a bellwether of this market, if it can win some short-term resistance battles, I really like the chances of this market trading neutral for a while. Um, so no, I'm rooting for neutrality for the next few weeks. I mean,
is what you want.
the what?
You want reprieve. You just want.
I just want reprieve, right?
Yeah.
I want a support level to hold and hang for a couple weeks. And then maybe that breaks to the upside, right? Maybe it breaks to the downside. But the more time I have to, and once again, I'm a huge cash flow guy, so I'm always rooting for, lulls if at all. But the more time I have to manage existing positions and have patterns play out, and then we get, give me a reprieve, give me a break, give me just some neutrality. I think that would be extremely good, even if we take another leg lower. It gives you a lot of time to plan, prepare, cash flow a little bit, roll those October, because if you have to roll October options into November or, into leaps or whatever they may be, having some time bleed off of those puts you in a great management position. So, I'm really rooting for this support level to hold a couple weeks, even if it breaks heading into the election.
And so many charts in big tech are looking just like this, Frank, where they've had that deep retracement. They violated moving averages. They're down here trying to hold and test. It's kind of a messy chart on Apple here, Frank. What would you want to see here if you were a bull? Could you play that pivot break at 113, or would you need it to kind of develop and cook for a lot longer than that? I mean, what would you want to see?
Aggressively, yeah. If we take out that pivot, we've broken resistance for the first time, right, since the pullback began. We've reclaimed a couple of the moving averages, the 9 and the 50. Now, the reason I always complain about deep retracements is there's more and more battles, right? It runs up and it wins that fight and it flies up to the 20 or to that previous resistance and it gets smacked back down and it's back and forth and back and forth. So I wouldn't expect it to shoot through the roof. But I would absolutely, personally, call breaking that pivot a bullish signal on Apple personally. As long as we're holding this support, that's important, right? It's important that we do hold this support. If we break down, then it's another level of resistance that we'll be having the same conversation on, right? But as it is right now, it's aggressive. But if someone were to tell me that, yeah, I'm getting into Apple if we break that pivot, I wouldn't want to be on the other side of that trade. I will say that much.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to be short if it happens for sure. All right, guys, couple more corporate notes than anything you got, Mark, than charts from Frank. DraftKings, DKNG. And by the way, a lot of the gaming space is very interesting. Frank, I'm sure, not gaming, but gambling, I should say, space is very interesting. I'm sure you found some charts in your scanning. I did as well. DKNG up here today on actually an upgrade, no initiated coverage. Make sure I clarify and get that right. Argus initiated coverage on the online gambling company with a buy rating. Wall Street firm said the online gaming industry is in the early stages of growth, and DKNG will continue to benefit from its market leadership. Something we've been talking about on the halftime show here for quite some time around, these kind of companies. Mark, I'm a complete agree here with them here, and I'm seeing it across the board, across gambling stocks. Look at Caesars here. Cody, I'm gonna flash you through a couple of charts. CZR. Kind of pushing up near resistance as well. Boyd Gaming, BYD. Yeah, kind of pushing up near resistance, against resistance, looking for a breakout. And then back on DKNG as well, because what we started with, again, pushing up near resistance on a momentum type trade. Mark, I know you love the space. How do you approach these kind of stocks right now?
Well, from a trading point of view, that Boyd chart was really nice. The sentiment's high. There's some juice there on the sentiment. So short-term trading, investing DraftKings is too pricey at this level. I love DraftKings, but it doesn't have a margin of safety right now because it's going to take a couple years for DraftKings to actually make money. And so I love the speculative bet on DraftKings a lot. I have 2 naked puts in the low 30s expiring in a couple of weeks. I'll re-up those at some point. Once Interactive Brokers jacking their margin things up is, and that starts on Monday, by the way, Interactive Brokers, and there might be other companies that follow. It makes some management issues on what I can do for those November options with increased margin. Eventually, I'll re-up it again. I'm still targeting those lower 30s as far as that margin of safety, but trading short-term trading, there's a lot of juice, there's a lot of sentiment, there's a lot of positive flow right now. So trade the charts on to the upside in the space. I would just personally require a much bigger discount from an investing point of view.
Frank, what are you
that's
seeing
fair.
in the gambling charts? I mean, the
Yeah.
charts are looking pretty clean to
Yeah,
me.
they're pretty good shape. I was actually hoping we're going to get a little boring day today. I was really liking the way Penn was developing, but they've really taken off here today. Makes it tough on the risk reward side. But I mean, you pretty much hit it. There's definitely strengths in there as a collective whole. None of them look so great that I can't pass on Monday on them. But it's mostly me being kind of picky, right? Unless the strength that I'm seeing within that space. But yeah, it's one of the places that's held up really well. There's no really doubt about it. I was also looking at Scientific Games, SGMS, but they too are just, I mean, it's tough after such a big pop day. It kind of messes with the risk to reward. Doesn't make the charts ugly, just messes with the risk to reward, right?
Yeah, it does. I mean, it's like, okay, do I have to put my stop loss below the candle here? Then do I have a 2-to-1? And if you're going to go all the way below the pivot, Frank, you're giving it like $5 of risk, right? So yeah, it can mess up some of that, which is why, quite frankly, as coaches, when we're going through the scouting report meeting, a big part of selecting one company over another comes down to, is there cheap risk? Is there a path to profitability? Do we see a clear target? Stuff like that, Frankie. And those little things, they make a difference in stock picking selection. No question.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a huge part of it.
Yeah.
Right, because you know you're going to lose a lot. You're wrong a lot, right? I always tell people, and when you're trading, usually you're either looking like a genius or an idiot. There's not a lot of middle ground, right? So you have to have favorable risk to reward, because you know sometimes you're just going to be dead wrong, no matter how great it looked, right?
Absolutely. Last one for me here, Mark, and you had the same note, I believe, as well. RCL, CCL, or Norwegian, any of them. Let's bring up RCL if we can. Cruise operators all kind of are bumping up here a little bit today, still with very, very ugly charts. Barclays upgraded the entire sector to overweight from equal rate, saying that the worst is over for the beaten down group, and that they're going to be able to get back out there and start making some money, get sailing at some point. Marky, do you agree with this note? Obviously, cruise lines have been right in the center of the pandemic. We know how much pressure they've been under and all that. They haven't been operating. What was your thoughts on this one?
I've had a rotating naked put on Carnival at $10 for 6 months, right? So I'm willing to take a spec bet on cruise because it's this return to normalcy that I believe will occur. And I think there's great opportunity. Now I'm not going to put my whole account, and I'm going to have a cost averaging down. And so I'm willing to take a bet starting on Carnival at 10. I do have a rotating naked put that I've been doing there, but COVID's still a wild card, right? A lot of bad COVID news out of Europe today. COVID's still a wild card. And so I'm willing to gamble a little bit, but it's going to be very, very conservative with the COVID wild card. Eventually, COVID will pass. People will cruise again. I do believe in that. But when that occurs, and if there are any bankruptcy casualties between now and then, that's the real risk you're taking.
Yeah, I think so as well. And we've seen them punt and delay on all these kind of things. I understand the spec bet at lower levels and whatnot, but I'm personally still a stay away. I think the charts are just too ugly. It's just not
and
my
it is.
type
It's just
of
a spec
approach.
bet. It's a spec
Yeah.
bet on a return to normalcy. If you get too aggressive, every time someone's got too aggressive in any of these spaces, they get slapped down in the last 6 months, right? So it's been a much more conservative naked put bet that's been a better play than the aggressive. Let me go. I'm going to get. Now, and once again, it goes back to our earlier conversation, right? I'm going to guess when something bottoms, right? That's a hard game to play. I'm going to guess when COVID turns the corner. That's a hard game to play.
It feels like an impossible game to play, quite frankly. Last one, Mark. Any other updated notes or news before we go to Frank's charts that you had?
Let's get to Frank's. European stock banks dropping to all-time low. People hate finance right now. Finance is ugly. Vail Resorts had interesting earnings. I think there might be opportunity there, but I'll cover that in my show afterwards. Frank, do your stuff.
All right. Always look forward to it. Well, I'm going to start with something that's cheap and it fits into Tim's casinos and gaming stocks, and that's EVRI.
Okay.
These guys are a fairly low price stock, 820, 825 ballpark. Not a particularly huge player, but have developed a pretty clear little level of resistance. Let's see if I got, oh, there we go. Yeah, we got a little, you can either do what Cody's done there, or you can just draw the flat line, and not much until about $10 in the way of resistance, at least to my eyes. So if I'm looking for momentum, if I'm looking for things in that gaming space, these guys are actually, and I had to kind of bite my tongue a little earlier, Tim, because I wanted to look at these guys. So you're talking about gaming. These guys kind of catch my eye. It's fairly mellow stock, right? So it's not, you know, I mean, anything can happen, but I wouldn't expect insane volatility with it. Very, very clear air above it until we approach that $10 mark, which is which would be nice. So I'm certainly watching these guys for a breakout myself.
I like it. I like a lot of things about it. Obviously, the space is developing in a bullish category. It's one lesson from any market condition, but currently in 2020, certain pockets are always going to lead and certain pockets are always going to fall back. It's the way that sectors rotate as markets and money managers move in and out of different spaces. Gambling and casinos right now seem to be a hot play on Wall Street, Frank. I mean, we looked at so many of the different charts. You catch me a little breakout there, a little cheap stock trade. I can see it. I can map out reward, risk, stop loss. I think it's a qualified trade for sure.
So yeah, I'd definitely be keeping an eye on them early. How about a reopening play for Mark? And that's AMCX. Well, I guess I don't know if you'd call it AMC Networks a reopening play or not. They're a little bit of both. But I wanted to get Mark's take, and he might have stepped away.
I'm here. I'm here.
Oh, there
Listen,
he is.
I'm never
Oh, okay.
too far
Well,
away.
you just disappeared on the picture of my screen. So so we got AMCX here. So we had that big gap up and have drifted back down, or starting to establish a little bit of support. A lot of room between the breakout point and the 200-day moving average. Is this something that, and maybe this needs some development? I think maybe aggressively you could talk about playing the retracement going up to that recent high. I think probably the better pattern would be the clean break there personally. But I think you could make an argument the other way. Is this something from a bullish perspective we could maybe want to follow?
See, this is one of those situations that I'd have to know what the gap up news. See, you saw that huge volume spike. See, and this is where I blend, like, I'm not a pure technician like Frank and Tyler. And so for me, I'd have to know, what was the volume spike? Is it a legitimate thing that can be sustainable? Is it real exciting news, or was it a one-off news event?
Fair enough.
Right. So I would have to know what the volume spike was all about.
They got into a deal with AMC Networks. It looks like AMC Networks to announces details of planned modified Dutch auction tender offer. Looks like,
no, that's going to move the needle, right?
Yeah.
Everyone, I mean, who can resist a Dutch tender offer, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna say I'm gonna delete them myself.
yeah. AMCX. Yeah.
So that might be one of those scenarios then, Mark, to maybe make you feel a little bit better. Is let's see how it responds. If we respond positively enough to break out of that actual resistance zone, maybe a little something there. The pullback itself, let's see if this was actual real news. Is that a fair way to maybe think
I'm
about
getting
it?
more detail on that, Mark. It looks like within the tender offer, they're going to buy back 250 million of stock is what it was. So they were pushing some money into stock buybacks within that.
Dude,
deal.
all I know is AMC. I miss The Walking Dead in its years.
Had some good times. Had some good times.
All right. The stock misses The Walking Dead too. Like,
is the Walking? Is it over?
Well, no, but it might as
Dude,
well
it was
be.
over after season 2 for me.
Yeah, I quit watching like quite a while ago after the Negan seasons, but I'll watch it on Netflix.
Good.
Yeah.
I'll watch it on Netflix when it's all there. All right. How about Azul, AZUL, Brazilian
Azul.
airline?
I do. Yeah. Interesting.
So we ran into
bullish retracement. Yeah.
Yes, we had a little breakout, right? It was sideways forever. It felt like over in the airline space. So it doesn't look tremendously different than the space as a whole, although I would argue it looks, a little stronger than some of its American counterparts. Broke out, pretty nice movement, right? Appreciation, decent volume creeping in as we were working to resistance. No surprise, we get to resistance. We see profit taking, the market selling anyway. But we've really stabilized over this week. Could I talk anyone into a retracement, or if you want to be a wimp, a breakout on these guys?
I see it. There's clear pocket. There's clear error. Buying a Brazilian airline is not on my radar personally. And it's
the same logic. Airlines for me, it's the same logic as cruise ships. I'm just like, until there is a real, genuine catalyst, something genuine. I mean, it's no different than any other breakout you've had. Can it be a short-term trade? Sure, like, but anything can. Like, but I don't feel the juice behind airlines right now.
Well, and I think this pivot point is really interesting from from a teaching perspective, because when you do go back and you look at charts that are finally back above moving averages, like we were on those gaming stocks, you know, right? Cody, bring up Caesar real quick, CZR, because it's easy to see it once you finally develop several pivot points and you're back above the whole thing. But Frank, I mean, it takes, you know, pivot point to pivot point to pivot point to develop that trend. Like back in May, when this thing was just above the 20 and the 9 and whatnot, I'm sure a lot of people are like, well, do you see it? Do you want to trade it? It did ended up taking off and running. So I cannot fault the technical signal, because on AZUL there, Cody, if you come back to AZUL for a second, you know, this is an old resistance, new support, pivot point, confirmation kind of moment. If you get confirmation, am I going to fault somebody for taking it for a trade up to the 200? No. Would I fault somebody who said they wanted to wait for the 1750 breakout? Probably not, but I would not like that trade as much as the pivot, Frank. I think if I was going to play it at all, it would either be the pivot or I would be waiting for a breakout pullback from there, you know.
All right, I like it. I like it.
Yep.
That makes a lot of sense. All right, let's look at a couple bear plays. So those are kind of my cheap ones this week. Let's look at a couple breakdowns. How about Tractor Supply? Tractor Supply, one of my faves. I like Tractor Supply, but
TSCO.
I'm all right with not liking Tractor Supply too, if the situation warranted. It's kind of an interesting situation. They kind of started selling before. I mean, a month and a half ago, I was watching them for a breakout. They sold off, so they kind of were ahead of the market. Have spent the most of September building a pretty clean little floor. That floor seems solid at this point in time. So maybe something we could even.
Well, I would
potentially
love it if the
believe in.
broad markets did this. This is
Wouldn't
the
that- yeah,
pattern.
I'm sure you would.
2 weeks from now, this is what I want to see on the broad markets. I would love that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think I'd be okay with that too. I wouldn't mind taking the next 3 weeks off and then kind of do what historically, right? We have a good November and December, late October. I wouldn't mind it going with the historical norm. We'll see if we get that though. So I don't know. That might be asking too much.
And I had this one on my my radar as well, because you know, if you break, you've got clear error.
Well, but the problem is you got a first test of the 20 weekly, and those first tests of rising 20 weeklies have an outstanding. So I would need it to get through that for 1 week. I would need it to test that for 1 week, and then it's a go for me. So it's a beautiful setup developing. Give me a test of that 20, have that break. It's a good trade at that point. So I need it to cook.
Need a week. All right.
I need it to touch that 21st and take a week and then break down. And
so,
then it's pretty.
Yeah. And if we go sideways for another week or two, then that'll automatically happen, right?
And that will automatically happen. Yes.
So even better. So, all right. How about something that looks pretty darn similar to that, Sportsman Warehouse? I think we probably looked at them last week, SPWH, Cody. Now, these guys are a little more advanced in that 20-day moving average mark. So these guys have actually, at least as of right now, it looks like they're going to close below it this week. Very similar type of a pattern to Tractor Supply. Is this something that maybe you like a little bit more?
Yeah, I like that a lot, actually. I think there's 9. Yeah, I like that.
Mm-hmm. And because it's already tested those weekly moving averages.
And you see, and that's what I'm talking about from a moving average perspective. You came down and you got those tests out of the way, and then a break, and now you have a clean horizontal support. So yeah, I like that chart a lot. Nice little short there.
Cool.
All right, and let's look at Momo. We got to look at Momo. They're always bearish, right?
Momo's been bearish for sure.
So last week a bearish retracement. This week hanging at support, right? Support, at least as of right now, is holding. Momo, I mean, they just don't have a lot of historical support until they get into the $9.50, $10 range, at least to my eyes. So I still think there's bearish potential over in Momo. From a breakdown, would be maybe nice if we consolidate and then drop a little bit. But even as it stands, we're kind of spending the last 2.5 trading days just dancing on that support level. Anybody buying it if that support breaks?
No,
I can't imagine. So you might not want to sell it, but you're probably not gonna gonna buy it. So there are some.
Momo's had a lot of good setups over the last year, right? A lot of great bearish setups. So
For sure. Yeah,
One
they've
of the
been.
things I really like about this one, and I think context matters. One thing I love about Thinkorswim charts is it puts the earnings dates on the chart so people can kind of see where price action and why the gaps were happening. I think most software should do that if they don't. You know, if I'm looking at this Momo here, this is the first support potential break. If it does break after the really, really bad earnings.
Right. Yep.
So it's not just another support shelf. It's the one right after all of the momentum and the volume and the bearishness came in. I can't imagine there's a bullish, position on Momo to be had here. I'm sure there are holders and believers and investors in any company, even in downtrends, that will hold throughout. But Frankie, I like this one. I see it. I like it a lot.
So Momo's been one of my favorite bears lately. It's no surprise you look at that chart, right? So, all right, let's look at a couple bulls here before we call it a day. Let's start out with EAF, Cody, if you would. Graph Tech International. Broke out last week on pretty good volume, drifted back and is trying to establish some support. All things being equal, I wish it would have, held a little bit of a higher low. But again, I'm, kind of a picky guy. And if I get the confirmation I need, I'm probably reclaiming that anyway. There was a ton of momentum on these guys on that breakout, as you can clearly see there. Pullback. Cody, this might be one of your type of candidates. Could I sign you up for this potentially?
Breakout pullback, Cody. That's your
sign me up for this. Yeah, that's my. Oh, I usually take the ones that Frank puts out there for me.
You're a good man, Cody. You're a good man, and you're even better, man, because you give me credit when it works out, and you don't blame me when it doesn't. So
Exactly.
you are the man, no matter what Tim says.
that is very gracious of Cody.
It is. Listen, I'll always stick up for Cody. He's kind of got a little Tim in him. He gets yelled at by Matt and Mark a lot too.
Just the young guy they punch at when needed.
Exactly. You just seem old. All right. How about this one? Elan Animal Health, ELAN. So these guys broke out, nice movement, very similar in the sense that we had the breakout. We're in the middle of that pullback, but I think you really have to go. I mean, it's nice. We've been hanging on the 50, right? We've got that 9. We're developing a little pinch. We can all, get on board with that. Go to a weekly if you would be so kind, Cody, because that's where these guys really stand out to me, is on that weekly itself. Very orderly pullback, right, into an old zone that we know historically has been very important technically to the stock. Anybody interested in this weekly retracement? How you might get into it, probably varies a lot depending on how you like, how you trade. But is this something that could get back on the radar from a bullish perspective?
Give me the daily again here.
Yeah,
Cody.
the dailies. I got too much moving average junk.
Well, zoom in a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about that. So let's talk a little bit about that. So step one, you got to break the 9, right? I mean, I think everybody.
Tell me downtrend on the candle. Sorry, Frank.
Right. So you've got a clear trend to the downside. I think all the coaches, at least here, would say at the very minimum, you got to get back above that 9. Is that fair to say, Mark? I know you well enough to know that,
Well, I mean, and it's not only 9. I mean, that is as a clear of trend line as you'll find. So getting above the 9 would likely break that trend line as well. So.
Right. Yeah. So we need. Yeah. So we're basically, and this could easily be one of those where let's let that be the signal, right? Let's see if we can break that. Let's be patient. If it just wants to go crazy, just cheer for the people who bought it, right? There's nothing wrong with other people making money. If we do break it, look to come back in on the next pullback, whenever that might occur. Could easily happen at, say, the 20-day moving average as a resistance zone. I really like that weekly chart, and I like the consistency of that. Mark's absolutely right. We've got to get through that before I would have any interest whatsoever, but you got to prepare, right? We might get through that next week. We might not.
It's a really, really interesting developing pattern. And so.
Yeah, I think it's a watch list candidate for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's been one I've been watching develop over the last several weeks, and I'm really liking the way that it is moving. Let's do a couple more here. Who are we gonna go with? Let's go with our old friends CHRW, Charles Robinson Worldwide. Little bit of a pullback. These guys have held up very well within the pullback of the market. Recently broke out, pulled back into those rising moving averages, maybe a little bit of a flag-based type of a pattern. Could I talk you into, Tim, a little continuation here?
You know, I like the breakout pullback condition here. I don't think that you've got to break the resistance up at 105 ultimately. Obviously, that would be a good signal. I think the way that you could play this, because it's not like you couldn't just add a little bit here on a first entry point aggressively. If somebody wanted to wait conservatively for the ultimate breakout, I think you could. Chewy has been a juggernaut. And Cody, back that out
No,
just one
this is
hair.
not Chewy. This is C.H.
That's
Robinson.
Or CHRW, sorry.
This is the trucking company.
Look at the trend line here, guys. I mean, if you look at that trend line over the last several months, this little location, Frank, is not just a horizontal level, it's a trend line level too.
No, this is my favorite chart. I love how the industry and this stock in particular has held up in the market volatility, right? Like that whole technical old resistance becomes new support. That's been a very hard thing to do in this market with the broad markets going down. It's held up like a champ, clear signal. Love the chart, love the space in the short term. That's a nice chart. That's a nice opportunity.
Yep.
One last thing I just wanted to add to that is I also like the fact that this breakout and pullback is at $100.
$100.
Right.
That's a
doesn't
bonus.
hurt, right? Yep, doesn't hurt.
Now that is a good chart. That's going to make my 100 list. Something's getting bumped off because I think that's
yeah, they've been strong. They've been very, very strong. All right, well, let's do one more, and this is another cheapie. This is Tech, TECK. Another one really broke out on some pretty decent volume, kind of a choppy breakout, but a breakout nonetheless. Have drifted back into, hasn't, I don't think, confirmed support, but trying to build support. Just a little pullback, a lot of momentum going within the stock. Anybody? I think I like Charles more. I think Mark probably does too. But certainly, I appreciate when things are holding up. I appreciate when I'm seeing a lot of momentum and a lot of participation. And we've definitely been seeing that with Tech here.
Well, and as a momentum trader, I like the increasing momentum from pivot to pivot. If you look at the pivot in August, it went from like 10 to 11 and change. This most recent pivot and breakout went from 11 to like 15. So we're seeing, or 12 and change, I should not say on the last one, but like a $2 move, now a $3, $4 move, tells me there's increasing momentum here, Frank, and participation. The volume is up on that move as well. I like the chart. I do.
I think materials is a hot. It's almost like this safety play in a weird way right now in the broad market.
Right. Yeah.
Materials is hot. The chart's nice. It's good pattern. It's good sector.
And the containers have been really strong too. I threw it up on Twitter. It's too late for probably, well, I don't know if you're playing momentum. Threw it up this morning, and that's WestRock, WRK. IP, another one has a good day. The space as a whole has had a very good day. So might be something difficult to, I always hate to bring something that's already happened, right? But definitely a space, much like the materials. I would agree with Mark personally in that regard. Certainly over in the container ship world, worth keeping an eye on. Might need some development, but a lot of strength going on over there. And I love that WestRock setup. I was hoping we would get that to line up a little nicer with the halftime report, but I'm not going to complain too much. It's not like it hurt me. But I wish we could have talked about it a little earlier. But if you do join us over at Tackle Trading on Twitter, anytime I catch something that's really jumping out to me or one of the other coaches do, I'll always get a quick snap, throw it up there. Love to share them with the team. So if you're not with us over on Twitter and are interested at Tackle Trading, we'd love to have you.
And one thing I think as to why you are so good at Twitter, Frank, is that you just thoroughly love charts, and you just find the ones that fascinate you. You share them with our audience and the followers over there on Twitter. So at Tackle Trading on Twitter, give Frank a follow for sure. Like and retweet anything that he puts out there. I think it's a wonderful thing to do over there on Twitter.
Oh, it's a lot of fun. Who doesn't like to share their charts? And you can find me personally at Frank Martin 23 if you're ever looking for me. But I'm easiest to find at Tackle Trading.
I love it. At Frank Martin 23 as well. All right, guys. Thank you, Frank. Thank you, Mark. Appreciate everybody here, guys. That is going to be that's going to be it for our show here today, and for our shows for the week. Really, always enjoy coming in and breaking things down with the halftime crew. Back on the
I do
S&P.
have my show in 40 minutes, my Market Bell show in 40 minutes.
And that is your weekly show as you end the trading week, Mark, 1 hour before the bell, where you kind of go through, you look at commodities, you look at everything from that perspective, but also trade management. You have conversations with our community. I know that our pro members who attend that show and are regulars, they're very, very grateful. And by the way, not only does Mark do the show on Friday night, Friday afternoon, I should say, to wrap up the week, but he does a Sunday night preparation show for the upcoming week, which I actually am going to be fascinated to see what happens over the weekend here, guys, to see how we're coming into Monday, because we're not anywhere near out of the woods yet on these charts. Technically,
the last couple of days, these are wonderful relief rallies. They're wonderful. Let's stall this out. This is a long game right now. This is, once again, if this was on, and it's no different than the rally we had, and this is my final thoughts, it's any rally we've had in this stretch, until it's actually on something that shifts sentiment. Tim, those outflows are likely to continue heading into the election. Sentiment is going to be wary, but man, I'll take these. I'm not going to go load up new triggers. I'm going to place a trade here or there, but I love these relief days to help me manage cash flow positions, and hopefully it does this for a few weeks.
Yeah, be open to bulls and bears is the way I'm approaching next week. And until we really establish a ton of momentum either way, I think it's the right way to approach it. Be mindful of risk to reward. You always should be, but if any bullish trade I take on Monday morning is going to be susceptible to the market throwing a fit, right, selling off, I want to have that risk to reward in my pocket always, but I'm going to be real picky as I'm going into this upcoming week.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. And that's the way it should be, right? You should be picky. You should get clear signals when those trading setups develop. All right, guys, that is it for our show. Mark, real quick, pitch our pro membership. It's an easy pitch, and it's just a valuable product. Explain what people can get out there if they do join our pro community.
Well, there's a lot of things you can get. And like if you enjoy Frank's charting session, as a collective group of coaches, we go through hundreds of charts here in a couple hours after the market closes and try to find what, in our opinion, as our collective group, the best charts, the best trade ups, setups. We put those in our weekly reports. But on top of that, we have tons of live content. We have tons of education models, and we have a vibrant community. If you want a free trial, you can always email me at team@Tackle Trading, or you can go to the store tab at Tackle Trading to see if this community and the educational product is a right fit for you. But those scattering reports, the collective effort that we do to find those best trade setups and the corresponding written and video material, that's worth the price of admission by your own. But if you're learning to trade, oh my gosh, we got so much for you that it's not even funny. So come give us a try, see if this community is something for you.
Yeah, and it's a simple thing to do, guys. In the bottom of every YouTube video we do, there's a link to a 15-day trial. You can also go directly to the website. And if you ever have any questions or things you want to get clarified or have a conversation about the pro membership or whatnot, team@tackletrading.com, and Coach Mark will take care of you. All right, guys, we are out for the week out there. Team Tackle, enjoy your weekend. Stay safe. Enjoy this last bit of beautiful weather that we've been having, and whatnot. It's my favorite time of year in that perspective, Frank. I love Utah
for
in
sure.
September,
Yeah,
October.
the fall is great. The weather's beautiful. It's beginning of football season. The Broncos still have a chance. A month from now, it's cold and the Broncos are out of the playoff running. So yeah, September's my favorite month of the year, I think.
Yeah, me too. All right, guys, we're done for today. We'll see
Thanks,
everybody
team.
on Monday.